I was very blessed. I had an incredible childhood. My parents loved me. My parents are still together to this day. They're 29 years going strong. My grandpa and my grandma played pivotal roles in my life. I would spend a lot of time with them. I always felt average in every sense of the word. I always felt like I was the median. I was the midpoint for everything. And so at one point, at some level, you feel at home everywhere. And at another, you're like, wasn't I meant for more? I'm just going to be average my entire life. I'm just going to be the midpoint my entire life. So those were kind of my thoughts for a lot of my childhood. I was normal in most aspects, but in one place I wasn't normal, was in writing. When I was 6 years old, I told my friend, hey, I saw my parents reading the New York Times. Why don't we build something to take that over? And I created something called the Sunny Times. And I'm 6 years old, and I'm creating a newsletter that no one told me to make, that I just felt called to do in my own heart. If there was ever foreshadowing for what the podcast would become, it is the Sunny Times. And so my childhood was like, I'm normal at everything, but writing is something where I feel more called and more compelled to share and to live it. I started blogs when I was 12 years old. I remember my first blog was for my Little League team. And I would write the recaps after every game of like, Johnny did this, RJ hit a home run. And I remember how much joy it gave my friends on the team, but also the parents of like, I can't believe there's someone like highlighting these stories. And so that kind of gave me that first inclination of covering people and what covering people could really do to their own sense of self-worth and importance. And so I kept doing these things, these blogs. Just highlighting people made me feel so good. Like I could appreciate them. And if I could appreciate them and they could see themselves as I saw them, then that made it all worth it. 13 years old was the clear moment of, wow, this internet is crazy. And how come no one is using it? How come no one is connecting with other people they're interested in around the world? Like, this doesn't make sense to me. I saw that I had this blog called Command Your Time. I was like, how do I get people to read this blog? Oh, I have to go out and connect with other human beings. Who are some of the best human beings connecting with other human beings? Well, at the time, it was a guy named Darren Rouse, and I read his book, Pro Blogger, which was impactful to my youth, and this guy named Gary Vaynerchuk, who was doing it through video. I loved these people. These were people I really admired because they were able to get messages out in 2009 on the internet. You know, one story from that time was a woman was like, a kid shouldn't be on the internet. And this kid is definitely not 13 years old. And I remember I posted my report card to like prove that I was 13 years old. And she was like, what the hell is this 13-year-old doing? He's out of his mind. Like, this is not good behavior. And I just knew at that time, like, oh, like what I'm doing here is different. Like, not everyone is doing what I'm doing. But then I looked at that woman and I was like, I kind of don't want to be writing this blog. Like, I want to be playing with my friends. You know, I could be a normal kid. I could have friends. So like, let me do that. And so I put the blog on the aside for a year, and then I got the itch again. I mean, well, this itch, it popped up from 15 to 25. The itch to connect with humans around the world and use the gifts that I was given was in me. And because I wasn't using them, I went to drinking, gambling, drugs, women, everything that you can imagine to not follow my gifts. I started on Twitter when I was 22 or 23 years old after I graduated college because I didn't want to work for anyone and I wanted to make money for myself. And it seemed like the people who were doing that most effectively were people on Twitter. And so there was a group of maybe like 20 to 50 people who I really started to resonate with their content. And this is exciting. And let me follow in their footsteps. Let me follow their path. And I came up with a username, Danny Roars. Looking back on it, I was so insecure. Like I wasn't able to post under my own name because I wasn't confident enough in what I was saying. And it wasn't the true version of me. And deep down, I knew that. It was so odd to me because I had everything I wanted and I had everything Twitter told me that I should want. I had a job. Well, I had two different jobs where I had an e-com store, so I was selling custom-made keychains. And I had a job working with Nate Schmidt where he was paying me a high salary to do very little work. And so I had these two things going on at the same time and making a lot of money for a 22, 23, 24-year-old kid out of college. And I could live from anywhere and I could do it all from my laptop. And I would say to myself, I'm not happy. I'm not fulfilled. I don't want to wake up. The tipping point for me was when, I've never talked about this. I was talking to my cousin during the holidays and I was repeating some of the things that I had heard on Twitter. And she started to cry. And I was like, I love my cousin. Like, why, for any reason, would I say something to make her cry? I took responsibility for it of like, I just said those things, but I don't even know if I believe them. And even if they're true, why'd I say them like that? And I realized that Twitter was programming it. And the programming that was coming out was not something that I actually appreciated or enjoyed or would want to emulate. Started to really question, like, are these my beliefs or are these just beliefs that people I read on Twitter held? And, you know, a lot of people talk about the mainstream media is saying this. Well, Twitter is mainstream media. Twitter is programming your thoughts. If you're on it 24/7 like I was. I guess I just witnessed in myself a lack of empathy for other perspectives and a feeling that I had a lot of room to grow. So how did I do it, right? How did I get out of the hole that I was in? There were two things. It was doing 75 Hard and it was meditating. 75 Hard is a 75-day program by Andy Frisella, which I was fortunate enough to interview for episode 346 of the podcast. Read 10 pages of a book. You do 2 workouts. One of them has to be outside. You drink a gallon of water. You eat and follow a diet that can't involve alcohol at all. And you take a progress picture. And it's pretty simple stuff, but done consistently. It was the first time in my life where I was like, oh wow, I thought I wasn't a disciplined person, you know, because normal people are not disciplined. And now I can do that. And so that to me was mind-blowing and exciting. And I was writing notes every day on my phone and I was unplugging from Twitter. And at the same time, I was learning to meditate. I now can see myself in third person. I now can understand that I'm not my thoughts. This was like pivotal for me. And this started September 2019. I moved back in with my parents and I just knew that I had to get my mind right and I had to use this time to completely isolate myself and to understand myself at a deeper level. I figured, I don't know where I'm supposed to go, but I know that I need to understand myself if I'm gonna make moves forward. So what can I do? Let me go back to the thing that I was doing as a child. Let me go back to the blogs, right? Let me go back to writing. In March of 2020, I noticed that DannyMiranda.com was available as a domain. And I can't tell you how excited this made me feel, like aside from the universe that I was on the right path, like now I can have my own name online, like, okay, I'm gonna write 2 blog posts a week for however long it takes until I figure out where I'm supposed to go. And so I did that. Those blog posts were foundational to help give me a sense of self, a sense of what do I value? And those blog posts were very similar to the blog posts that I wrote at 13, teaching myself and others how to be happier, how to make the most out of life, how to find purpose. To give you context, I started meditating in September of 2019. So I meditated 20 minutes a day until May of 2020. And then May of 2020, I said, I can go deeper on myself. And I heard about Naval's 60-minute, 60-day meditation challenge. Within 7 days of doing this challenge, I realized there was a situation in high school where the entire school thought that I was running a Twitter account that was gossip for the entire school. So this Twitter account would be making fun of different people and doing it in really clever ways, and everyone thought it was me. I know it's not me. I need to prove that it's not me. I went through the Twitter account's tweets and then found the places where the topics and the times that Twitter account had tweeted and matched it with every other person in the school. And I found it was this one kid. So what do? I tell everyone, it's not me, it's this person. The person ended up being a D1 baseball player, 6'3". I was probably 5'11", 140 pounds, soaking wet. He pushes me into a locker, and I was like, oh my God. So I'm in a meditation, 7 days in, 60-minute meditation. I realized for the first time, wow, the reason why I started lifting weights was because of that moment. The reason why I held out to some resentment was because of that moment. The reason why I was angry at certain moments of my life in college was because of that moment. And to trace back so much anger and to trace back so much of the reasons that were fueling me that I was unconscious of, it's like, are you kidding? This is the craziest thing of all time. In that moment, I said to myself, I was like, I forgive myself for holding on to that. Then I said to myself, I forgive that guy for doing that. Like, I would probably, like, I understand where he's coming from to do that. And then I was like, oh, wow, I feel a lot better. And I swear to God, in that moment, life changed. I started calling people on the phone in July of 2020. And because of doing the meditations, because of all the discipline, because of all the 75 hard, because I was feeling so good about my life, I had such energy about me. And people were like, wow, this was a different phone call. I feel different after speaking to you. And I was like, I got to record these if you feel different after doing it, because maybe some people will enjoy this as well. And that's what started the podcast. It was completely organic. It was not one moment, a flash of inspiration. It was just following the joy over and over and over again and understanding, where are people getting joy from the things that I'm doing? And let's do that more. Because if that feels good for me and that feels good for you, let's expand that to more people and let's keep doing that. I realized from having and achieving the goal that it wasn't the goal. And when I started to find out what were the things that were filling me up that I could do for the next 10 years and for it to be fun, that's when I stumbled across the podcast, because I was like, I'm having these phone calls anyway. And that's what's so remarkable to me is I do 3 podcast episodes a week and people are like, how do you do it? And I'm like, I get to have conversations with 3 incredible people every week. Are you kidding me? Like, I would pay to do this. And I did pay to do this for a while, right? So I think that finding that thing that you inherently do is the cheat code to life, or at least that's been the thing that's unlocked it all for me. And if people are lucky enough to get there, it's like, it's a never ending high that makes you wonder how you even existed in the first place. It really clicked for me that if I was going to do and devote something as my career and make something my career, it was important to make something my career that actually made me a better human being. I realized, like, oh, I'm interviewing these people that I'm spending a lot of time researching, but what am I doing to the person that I meet on the street? What is the cashier at the checkout at the grocery store like? And how can I light up their day as well? This is why I talk so much about meditation. Is because it makes me more present. And the way you be a better interviewer is you're more present to the creation. I mean, there was a situation with Alex Ramosi that I talked about in my course where I could see his mood and complexion changes completely. And I just called it out. And I could see the ways in which what he was saying was something that he had really never spoke about before, or that it was difficult for him to speak about. And if you look at the comments of the episode, it's like, people noticed that too. They noticed that I was present, that I was there with them in that creation. A good interviewer is present. A good person is also present as well. You know, I think I always give credit to my grandmother and my mother for teaching me that skill. Like, at the heart of it, I had that because I knew they always were present with me. They were always curious. They were always really there with me. And I was like, wow, if I could give this to the guest that I have on, if I can give this to just a random person on the street, that's really what we're here for. We're here to just walk each other home.